If there's one thing we can't control in the world, it's the weather. In the countries of the northern hemisphere of the world, where there are severe climate conditions during the wintertime, children and teenagers are still forced to go to school because they only take their vacations during the summer. What if the school vacations were during the winter instead of summer? My name is Yasser Abelo. I am the Alchemist. Alchemist is an old term used for pharmacist, which I am. Beyond what pharmacists do nowadays, alchemists also had the sacred knowledge not only of science but also of the spiritual. This knowledge was lost and forbidden throughout history, but now we are rediscovering them, and with the power of technology, I can share them with you. I created this YouTube channel to share my experiences as a scientist and my point of view of many things that can be done differently in order to bring benefits to everyone, improving overall lifestyle in so many different aspects like healthcare, safety, education, employment, economy, government, and so on. If you are curious about how you can be affected by those changes that I will suggest, please watch my video fully and then post your comments. Because the questions that you may have maybe already have answered within the video. Once again, I am the Alchemist and welcome to my channel.
No, I'm not going to fucking school!
Excuse me?
I'm not going to school!
Excuse me?
Nothing!
We're going to have a talk about your language. Now,
I don't care!
you can
I don't want space! I don't want to go to school!
you can put your clothes on, or I can take you up there in your skivvies.
I'm not going to school!
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not!
We shall see.
I am not, Dad!
You may think this video is funny, but what actually happens in their developing brain when they say they hate going to school? Young children may not be able to identify or understand the specific actions related to the school during the wintertime. And because their vocabulary is not that extensive, they just say that they hate going to school in general. In this video, I'm gonna prove to you 10 scientific facts of how switching the school vacations from summer to winter would be beneficial both mentally and physically, as well as spiritually, not only for children, teenagers, and their families, but to everyone who lives in the North. Fact number 1. Safety. We care for our children, and safety is the priority on this list. During the winter, the roads can get slippery due to the snow, and car accidents increase significantly. It's much more likely to a bus to flip due to its height than a regular car. The last thing we want to happen is our children to be involved in car crashes and accidents on the road. So it's safer for children and the drivers not to be on the bus during this time. Not to mention that the snow may be covering potholes, and more accidents mean higher insurance payment. Fact number 2. Skin cancer. Dermatologists recommend avoiding being exposed to sunlight in the summer from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. due to its high-intensity ultraviolet radiation. Currently, the students are not in school during summer and constantly exposed to the sun. They could get skin burn or even skin cancer. If they were not on vacation during the summer, they would be protected from the sun inside the classrooms, especially during this dangerous time of exposure. The days are longer during the summer. The sunset can be around 8 p.m. depending on where you are located in the globe. So, if they were in school during the summer, even when they leave school around 3 p.m., they still would have lots of hours to enjoy the sunlight during the safer time to be exposed. We should maintain balance. It shouldn't be all sun in the summer and none in the winter. Fact number 3. Serotonin. Taking too much sunlight can be harmful for our health, especially in the summer. However, we must take at least some sunlight. When our skin is exposed to the sunlight, our body produces vitamin D, which is primordial for the production of a neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is responsible for the well-being feeling, the sensation of satisfaction, and joy. It's not a secret that people are happier during the summer. Since we cannot control Mother Nature, we cannot ask for more sun. During the winter, the nights are longer and days are shorter. However, we can work around the exposure time to the sunlight. Currently, children and teenagers leave their home early in the morning in the winter to go to school around 8 a.m. and only come back home around 3 p.m. They basically lose the entire time of sunlight of the day. Since sunset is around 3 to 4 p.m., most schools don't have big windows in the classrooms to let the sunlight in. They use artificial lights. If they were on vacation during the winter instead of summer, they definitely could enjoy more the only few hours of sunlight in the day. Fact number 4. Melatonin. While the presence of sunlight produces serotonin, the lack of it makes our body produce melatonin, which does the opposite of serotonin. If serotonin is a stimulant that makes people happy, excited, hyper, melatonin makes people lazy, slow, and sleepy. Bears seek dark caves to hibernate, and polar bears sleep throughout the winter because they don't get any sunlight in the poles. Therefore, levels of melatonin are highest during the winter. When kids wake up to go to school, it may be still dark outside, and it's hard to leave the comfortable bed when your body is lazy and warm to dress up with dozens of pieces of clothes like boots, scarves, gloves, hats, etc. before stepping outside. And as soon as they leave their home and breathe the cold air, that can lead to a potential thermal shock in the lungs. The body takes time to adjust to the temperature. All of that can be such a traumatic experience, especially for younger kids, which only makes them hate going to school even more. Fact number 5. Depression. It is known that the wintertime is the time of the year that people get the most depressed. With all that has been said here so far, it makes easier to understand why. The major reason for depression during the winter is because of the lack of sunlight. The incidence of suicide increased during this period. If kids and teenagers were exposed to more sun, even from inside their home, through the windows, where they can be wearing comfortable clothing to expose their skin to the sun, they could produce enough vitamin D and, therefore, more serotonin, which makes people happier. Now, this is the most polemic topic of the video, so please pay attention carefully. Suicides are already explained, but what about homicides? If you take a look at the history in this past decade of shootings in the school in the US, you may notice that the majority happens during the wintertime. The government is constantly trying to find ways to work around this public issue. Obviously, each mind is different, so you think it may take a lot for someone to commit a homicide, but the fact is that during the wintertime, our minds work differently. In the US, the Second Amendment won't be altered, and it is so easy for everyone to have access to guns. There are gun shows, and you can buy them in pawn shops, or even sports stores, like if they are any simple object. This is a serious and long discussion that is going to be a topic for another video. Aside from that, you may be thinking, what shootings in school have to do with vacation time, don't you? Some schools have anti-bullying programs and counselors, even psychologists, to try to help children who may be depressed. But why do you think shootings still happen? In the minds of those shooters, they want to get revenge against the school, blaming the schools for the reason for the depression. When it starts to get cold and the body feels the climate change by temperature, humidity, etc., the smell of dry leaves in the air, or even seeing the snow falling, all of that activates the sensors that are connected to the brain, and the subconscious brings memories from the past winters. Every winter, year after year, they suffered from lack of sun, less vitamin D, and serotonin. Those memories in the subconscious associate the depressing time with winter and all the activities that they have done during this period, including the trauma of going to school. If in the presence of sunlight our body produces serotonin and we are hyper, the heartbeat and breath rates are also higher. People are more awake and more oxygen gets to the brain. The synapses in neurons happen more frequently, and more information can be transmitted in the form of thoughts. People act more rationally. During the wintertime, on the other hand, with a higher level of melatonin and sedation, the breath and heartbeat rates can be slowed down. The blood runs slower and less oxygen gets to the brain, which means fewer synapses.
One good example of that is the fact that we yawn when we are sleepy. With the heartbeat and breath rates reduced, our brain sends signals to the lungs to yawn in order to catch more oxygen that goes to the bloodstream to irrigate the brain and more synapses can occur. That's why doctors recommend us to take deep breaths before thinking better in order to resolve a solution for some situations.
That can explain that not every shooter is necessarily a psychopath, but anyone's brain can play mind tricks by putting some suicidal or homicidal thoughts on it. If they didn't have to go to school during the wintertime, their subconscious wouldn't associate their past trauma that the winter brings with school at all, because they wouldn't be anywhere close to the school. And obviously, if the schools were shut down during the winter, shooters wouldn't have access to it, and the students wouldn't be there, so they wouldn't be victims either. Think about how many lives we can save by switching school vacation time from summer to winter. Not only students, but also teachers and staff. We now got to the midpoint of this video, and if you already agree that the change will be beneficial, I'd love to have your support by signing the petition at change.org. The link is in the description below. It's completely free of charge, so you have nothing to lose. If we get the minimum number of signatures, we can take it to the Supreme Court and make a difference together. If you're still not convinced yet, I encourage you to keep watching the video, because you may change your mind about it in the end. Fact number 6. Flu. During the summer, it's less likely for us to catch a cold because it's a warmer temperature and our immune system is stronger. The ideal body temperature for its best performance is around 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. When the room temperature drops, that also can bring the body temperature down. The immune system becomes debilitated, so germs take advantage to attack. The immune system of children are still being developed, so their bodies are still even more sensitive to those attacks. Once children are already depressed, the body temperature is cold, and they don't take enough sun to produce vitamin D, they get a lot more susceptible to get a flu. If there is one sick child in the classroom sneezing or coughing, the other ones who are breathing the same air in the tight space can get sick more easily. Not to mention that children like to stay closer to each other, and they may still not know how to take precautions like covering their mouths, using hand sanitizers, or washing their hands to prevent spreading germs, or even cleaning their runny nose with a disposable tissue as adults do. Even if you don't have children, you might have a coworker who has children. Once kids get flu in schools, they can bring it to their homes, to their parents or grandparents, who can also spread it to their coworkers. Then it becomes an epidemic. Healthcare insurances spend millions of dollars yearly with flu shots and medications. We could easily avoid that, preventing our children from getting sick by switching the school vacations calendar from summer to winter. This way, our children wouldn't be exposed that often to other sick children or catching the flu. Your health insurance costs could be lower. The United States is one of the few countries in the world where health insurance is not free for everyone. And if that measure could be taken, maybe the government could use all that money saved to provide free health insurance. Fact number 7. Holidays. In the southern hemisphere, the weather is inverted from the northern. I grew up in Brazil, and in almost all Latin America, the days and nights suffer minimal variations on daylight hours throughout the year. We didn't choose the school vacations to be in the summer because it is summer. We chose them to be during December and January because in December we also celebrate Christmas, and in January, the New Year's Day, both as national holidays. The Christian population in Latin America is massive. That's the most important holiday where families gather to celebrate together. In the US, there are so many people from every part of the world, with different cultures and religions. Many other religions celebrate their festivities in the winter, like Hanukkah,
and Yule in December, and the Buddhism festivity in January. If the schools in the Northern Hemisphere were on vacation during the winter, the students could plan better to spend the end of the year festivities with family members or friends. Or, if their families can afford, they could be traveling to a warmer place, like the southern states. Aside from Christmas, Americans also celebrate Thanksgiving as a national holiday. Families could go shopping for their Christmas gifts together. Kids would love to have more time to go to the mall, visiting Santa, and decorating their homes with Christmas tree, Christmas lights, etc. Because family time matters and those activities bring more joy to kids, teenagers, and their families, since wintertime is already so depressing. We care for their mental health as well. We don't want them to be so stressed out about school to the point that they can't enjoy life. Not to mention that when the snow is high, schools also are shut down. If they were on vacation, wouldn't be necessary to have so many breaks because those breaks interrupt the learning process. My suggestion is to start vacation before Thanksgiving, last week of November. This way they can engage more with their families without worrying to do homework or studying for tests. Fact number 8. Learning. Currently, the students take a lot of breaks during the winter, like up to 1 week for Thanksgiving and another 2 weeks for Christmas and New Year's Eve. Those interruptions slow down the learning process because they are in the middle of the school calendar year. The human brain already tends to forget new information in a couple of days. If they take weeks to return to school, this new information is already lost, and then the teachers would have to spend more time to remind the students to pick it up from where it was left off, retarding the learning process. Since the winter time brings high levels of melatonin because when they get home it's already sunset, they will fall asleep faster. Sleepy, they will not focus on their homework or even feeling like studying for tests. And if they are depressed, it's even worse. Their scores will be lower because they don't feel like studying at all. If they were already on vacation during the winter, starting at Thanksgiving week, there will be no reason for those breaks. They still are human beings and deserve a break sometime. So, for example, after the midterm exams, they could take 1 or 2 weeks of summer break, where the students could still enjoy summer camp activities. Fact number 9. Employment. For those teenagers who already reached the legal age to start working, if they were on vacation from school during the winter, this would be the perfect opportunity for a temporary job. So many stores hire seasonal employees for the winter sales, starting on Black Friday, then Cyber Monday, which now is also called Cyber Week, Christmas, of course, and then the blowout sales after Christmas to get rid of the stocks. And they don't stop immediately there. Those seasonal jobs still extend through January because some customers return products after New Year's Eve, and the stores have to reorganize new inventory, replacing items on the shelves, for example. During the winter is the best opportunity for teenagers who wants to start working because there are lots of temporary jobs and they wouldn't conflict with their school. The winter holidays also bring a lot of shoppers, even overseas, to take advantage of the deals, and that's everywhere nationwide. But here in South Florida specifically, every winter also there is a lot of tourists and the snowbirds, who are the residents who only live here during the winter to escape the cold. Therefore, there are a lot more jobs during the winter here. But during the summer, there are no snowbirds, no shoppers, and almost no tourists because it is hot weather everywhere else. And on top of that, the schools are on vacations, and most families also travel away from here. That brings down the local economy so low for many industries like hotels, restaurants, shops, etc., to the point that they even have to close their business because they cannot maintain a high rent, which is a fixed amount year round. The local workers could have more jobs during the summer if the schools were operating. If the students had classes during the summer, they would have to go to school, so there would be more Uber and taxi riders, for example. And if they were not traveling away, their families would spend more money locally in industries that need customers, like grocery stores, restaurants, shops, etc. That would keep the local economy balanced. Fact number 10: Traffic. Like I mentioned before, the wintertime brings lots of tourists from all around the world, shoppers, and part time residents, also known as snowbirds. The snowbirds stay up to 6 months, and they even bring their cars here, which increases the volume of cars in the traffic. Since currently the schools are also operating during the winter, the traffic in school zones has to be reduced to the speed of 15 miles per hour during rush hours, and with such a high volume of traffic, when they reduce to that speed, it only gets more and more congested. Risks of accidents also increase, not to mention high levels of stress that we could be avoiding. Here, for example, the state of Florida is spending millions of dollars to expand the major highway, the I-95, to comport more cars because they know how busy it gets during the winter. During the summer, though, it's a different story. There are not many tourists for the most part, no shoppers either, and no school, then traffic is so light compared to the winter. If the school vacations were transferred to the winter, there wouldn't be necessary to reduce the speed to 15 miles per hour in school zones, because the schools would be closed. Then obviously the traffic would be improved and the county wouldn't be spending so much money. If the schools were shut down during the winter, another suggestion is for the government to use the public school spaces for other purposes, like providing shelters for the homeless, for example. During the winter, all shelters are overoccupied, and many don't have a place to stay to protect from the freezing weather, so they get sick and even die. They have been through a lot by losing their jobs, their homes, with hunger, and having a place to stay warm with hot water and sleeping comfortably, at least during the winter time, will definitely give them some hope that nowhere else they may find.
Now that you have watched all the 10 facts of why changing the school vacation time from summer to winter would be beneficial to almost everyone, and if you also agree with me, please don't forget to sign my petition at change.org. The link is on the description below and it's totally free of charge.